Hello again, everybody. Welcome back for part 5 of the community Mobiflight Device tutorial. I'm hoping at this point you have a good overview of the whole process and are trying out some of the different tools. You've been looking at the template code and maybe getting into your own project. Part 4 was a whirlwind intro to the configuration process. We covered a lot. Today we'll be starting our project, our demo project, and finally showing the effect of our configuration in Mobiflight. There will be some overlap with the last part, but today will be a lot more practical and less theoretical, and we'll finally see some code running in Mobiflight. We'll start building our basic demo project, which is a simple flap indicator. I've got two different honeycomb devices. I've got the Sierra module for my GA, and I've got a Bravo throttle quadrant, which covers a lot of other multi-engine airplanes. I love these things. They're great price and high quality, but the things that I don't like about them is this little flap lever. It's a simple up-down and just increments or decrements your flaps. You have no way of telling where the flaps are set. So I think for our demo, we'll build a simple up-down flap state indicator. I'm not sure if I want a realistic display on this thing or something that is more easily checked at a glance, but what I'm going to do is go with the realistic one and try this out and see if it's how that works in practice. So I've already done a couple things that I mentioned in episode 2 of the tutorial series. I selected my hardware. I'm using one of these LilyGo T-Display S3s. This has a built-in 1.9 inch little LCD display and a built-in ESP32S3 on the back. I like these things because they're rugged, they're pretty durable, even though they don't have a back cover on this stuff. I'm not terribly sure. And I had a bunch of them in the parts drawer. So I think they're fairly rugged and useful, and I don't want to take a whole lot of space, and I'm not sure it's going to be the best thing at the end, so I'm going to build it and decide if and where I want to mount it on the honeycomb throttles. I've also confirmed the SIMVARs. Let's get rid of this. I've also considered the SIMVARs that I want to use. I made sure they were there. I was pretty sure that the flaps weren't going to be a problem, but I came over to the SDK document and saw what was available. So I know that I can get the current handle position and I can get the current flap position. Right now I'm going to just focus on the flap position, but maybe I'll add a handle animation in later. Probably not important for right now, but just so you see my thought process. I thought about what I wanted the screen to look like, and so I used an image of the C172 flap indicator sized for the screen, and then I left a little space, a little black space on the right side to show this actual indicator that I'm just going to do with a white circle over here. I also noticed that the scale isn't linear, so we may need to do something to make that movement, but we can handle that in code. We could do that in Mobiflight, or more likely, we'll just do it in our custom code. So I built a quick test project, and that's what you're looking at here. They got the display working, and I also did a quick graphics treatment and thought about how I'd update the screen, how I'd use some sprites, and how I'd update the screen while I was in there doing this kind of warm-up mode development. None of this has anything to do with Mobiflight so far, other than making sure that the variables are there, and this was just a simple ESP32 project. So the next step is going to be to start a new community template. But this time, I'm not going to pull it from the main repo, template repo. I'm using Ralph's. I'm using ElRal's ESP32 support. So it's a different URL that I can paste in here because I'm using the ESP32 because that's what's built into my hardware device. This has worked really well, but the firmware, the main Mobiflight firmware, has evolved since Ralph created this one. So we're going to run into a few difficulties along the way. I'll show you some debugging techniques. If you want to take a look at this, I will paste the GitHub repo. Another thing to remember if you're browsing this is a different branch. You'll come into this by default. You'll be into the main branch. You want to go into this ESP32 support. I know they just recently added Pico 2 support, which is kind of fun. I haven't tried that out yet, but we'll focus on ESP32 support. So let's start off where we did in the other ones, and let's let's grab that. Let's see, I know I've got it in my history here. We're going to do a little bit different git command today. Rather than just pulling it directly from this, we want to make sure that we get the ESP32 support branch. So we're going to do a git clone with the branch argument to grab that. And we get it. There it is. And let's rename that to, let's call this flap. We'll call it cc flap end. Okay, there we are. And we see that it does have this version does have the renaming. I've been working on the renaming after the last video. Let me see, while we get this going, let me find, I know I need to copy this over. Oop. There it is. I've been working on the renaming script. After the last demo and reading through some of the issues with it, I saw that, let's see if we got the newer version. We do. It's got a new date on this, a new time on this. It's actually older, but it is the right one. I realize that the renaming script, if you don't know how it works and if you don't know what it's doing, you could put in some bad values. For example, if you type your author name as Chris space Crawford, that will break things, but it will allow you, the renaming script will do it, but things will break when you're in there. So I added some more error checking here. So and some help for when you're using it. I explain what's going on, explain what you can and can't do, and I give you some suggestions for the device name. Keeping things short is a good idea. So I will name my device flap end, and I'm going to use I'll use ccraw for my author name. And before it does the rename, it's going to tell you what it's changing, just so you can put some eyes on that. And if I accept this, we're there. And let's start Visual Code, which opened on another window. So let's bring it over here. And while this starts bringing in, it'll start bringing in things by default here, setting up the platform IO, and it'll start bringing in some other things. While we do that, let's talk about some things that we're going to see over here that might be just a little bit different. The main thing that we should see, okay, we see our flap end has been renamed. Let's tidy up this too so that we see what we want to see. And maybe let's make this one notch bigger. And we don't need you. All right, so project has been successfully updated. We can go ahead and start editing, but let's start with the platform.io.ini and check out some of the things here. We will see that a lot of these look the same, although the core firmware version is called ESP32 support. And we see that there are going to be, we've still got the other custom firmwares in here for Micro and Uno, Nano, Raspberry Pi Pico. And then finally at the bottom, we see that there is an ESP32S3 here. As I mentioned, the firmware has moved on. And so when we try to compile this, let's try to compile this. And while that's going, because it'll take a minute here, we'll talk about some of the other things that are coming in. The best part about these pre-built templates is you don't have to struggle through what a lot of these default builds should be. This is kind of a lengthy thing when you're trying to do the setup, and having these pre-populated so that everything just kind of uploads and goes is super nice. One of the things, I thought I had fixed this. Okay, so one of the things that I'm going to want to edit is this Mobiflight flap end. This is much too long of a name. It has to be 16 characters or less. And so what I am going to do is shorten this down. So this will be the name of the device in there. So I certainly don't need the word Mobiflight, and I will just call this, I'll just call this flap end. So that's what the name of the device will show up as in there. We don't want to mess with this Mobiflight type unless we're ready to change it in a lot of places. I'm just going to leave that alone. The other thing that we will want to change will be in the board section. But let's just go back up to the top here and make sure there's nothing else that we want to modify right out of the gate. I am going to turn on this debug setting, this debug to command messenger. This will allow us to do some output. You can't normally use the serial port for output because command messenger is also wanting to use the serial port. And if you just send debug messages out the serial port, you're going to confuse the Mobiflight client. You can do it if you want to, but just realize that it's going to break it has the potential to break the client if you're not careful with that. We're still building here. This is the first one, always takes a while. So let's take a look at our community devices as well. We see the normal collection of different boards in here. We're going to be focusing on the S3. So let's take a look at this. This is kind of funny, and this is a caveat I'll give you about the ESP32. I see some errors going by here. We'll deal with those in a second. It does have AVR dude settings in here. You cannot use AVR dude to flash an S3. So although it still has it in here, it's not going to work in the client. You'll always have to flash it either with ESP tool or right out of VS Code. VS Code will work. So what we see here is we see that it built for each of the boards because we didn't delete any of them, but it failed with the S3. So let's go down and let's see what's going on with that. So we want to go back. We can take a look at the problems, and I see a bunch of things that weren't defined here. If you come over to this problems tab and you click on this, it's going to take me right to the place where that happened. And it's saying that, okay, memlen config wasn't written. Since the output worked for 5 of the boards, but not the ESP32, that tells me that there's a problem with the ESP32 setup in our platform.io.ini, and it's missing a memlen config. If I hit control, if I hold down the control key and click on this, it'll show me where that's being defined. And if I do let's go back to that. Or if I highlight this and do Control Shift F, it will start searching. It will start Control Shift F. It will search for, it wasn't highlighted. It'll search for that. And I see that it's defined in a lot of places. And if we click on this, we'll go to it and we see that, okay, look at this. It's defined for the Pico, but there's not another one below it. We know the ESP32 is below it, so it's not defined down here. We need to define this constant as one of our build flags. It's missing, so memlen config, memlen names buffer, and memlen names buffer, just those. I'm going to guess that it's also missing max devices. I'm just going to grab these 3 out of the these are memory links. There's a lot of memory in the ESP32, and it's comparable to the Raspberry Pi, so I'm just going to put those, I'm going to paste those down here. Oop. Do that. Redo that. And I just want to get rid of that. Let's try rebuilding this now. It is going to have to do a complete rebuild again because I changed platform.io.ini. And again, remember that I'm editing the one that's in my directory, not the one that is down here, not the base one. I'm doing my device platform.io.ini. That's the one you're always going to want to edit. All right, so that's going and it's succeeding. The other thing that I want to do here is I'm going to, going forward, I'll change my project environment so that I don't have to recompile for all of these things every time when I just want to do the ESP32. I could just remove all of the environments that I don't want to do. We'll leave it in there for now because I'm not sure if we'll want to change boards. I mean, I could always just re-add them if I do delete them. But the other way to prevent that is to click on this, and then pick the environment that you want to work in. And so we'll do the ESP32. Now going forward, it will take care of that. I hope I don't screw up this compile though. We'll let it keep going. All right, so we have edited, where were we? The danger of doing too many things at once. We edited our board. Oh, we were going to talk about a few other things in here, maybe two. I know the hardware ID is okay for this. Sometimes if you're using an off-brand device, you may need to add a hardware ID. This is how Mobiflight knows it can flash particular firmware on a board that has no information. And these need to be changed for my ESP32 because I know we can't, just to prevent somebody from trying to do that. This should really be false in the template, I think, but we'll just leave those because we won't be able to, like, as I said, you can't upload firmware with AVR Dude, and that's what the client uses. We're only going to do one device type, so to avoid confusion, and great, we see that this succeeded. The ESP32 version succeeded. I'm going to just take out the second device type because we're only going to do one device type here. The community, so this is the information that also appears in the client. It doesn't get updated by the template. So what we'll call this is CCRA. This one has a little more, I think has a little more grace, but we'll see. We'll call it CCRA C172 flap indicator. And we could add our GitHub repos there. I won't bother with that right now. We could also change the module limits right now and the pins. If you're this device does not have the standard dev kit pins. It only has a few of them because some of the pins are already assigned for the display. What we want to do is take out those pins that are used for the display and then possibly limit the number of other things. We also know that we can only have one custom. The maximum number of custom devices is one because we only have one display in this. And we might want to remove some of these other ones, but right now that's not going to affect my kind of minimal viable product here. We'll just get those going. So we're going to, later on, we would come back and clean these up. Right now, I'm just going to leave them as they are. Let's take a look at our device settings. We're not going to have a second device, so I'm going to delete this one. And we will go into our devices, and we'll clean this up. So we're labeling the device. This is the user-friendly label that will appear in Mobiflight. The type has to match the types that we've been using. The renamer takes care of all of that. And I could add my URL here again for this. We'll leave the version numbering alone, but here I know I'm not going to use any pins with this since they're already built into the board. I don't want the user assigning pins. Now in the last one I mentioned that there used to be a bug in the client where if you had no pins defined, the client would crash. Looks like that's been fixed, so we can safely delete all of those. While we're here, we'll come in and generally I'm editing this message types quite a bit during development of a more complex project. Today we're only going to use one. I'll tell you what, we'll put in two. So we'll say flap position. And what I usually like to do is paste in the, what did I just do there? What I like to do is usually paste in the SIMVAR that I'm going to use here or that I'm intending to use. But we'll just, I know that flap position as a number between 0 and 1. We're going to use a decimal fraction. And then we could add like a flap lever position here. And I'm honestly, I'm not sure if that's an index. I'm not sure if that's, we would go over to our SIMVARs and we would figure out whether that is set the position of the flap control. So what I would probably do is grab my SIMVAR watcher and do flap position. See what's available for that. Oh, nothing. Huh, that's not, oh, that's because that's an input variable. So maybe I'd come over here and I would start adding some of these here we go, flap handles %. I bet you that's the one that I want. And it is done as a decimal. That's the % over 100. So maybe I would, so what I might do, so we would add the request to that. We can copy the name. And what I might do is say flap lever %. Oh, wait. And we would say that that is that. We're not going to use number 2, so we will just delete that. And now we've got 2 inputs set up. We've got our device compiling just fine, and we've configured our pins. So we've set up the platform io.ini, we've set up the board, we've set up the devices. Let's go into let's hit the custom device, because that's where the pins are also set here. You could leave this alone, but I get nervous when we are assigning variables with values that aren't there. I think we need to add some defensive code here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out some of this code just so it doesn't cause me some crashes. This is the kind of thing, C is kind of screwy that way. It can work for a long time and then start crashing just because it was assigning the way that undefined actions can take place. So we're going to get rid of that second custom device. And so we check and we see if it's the device's flap end. So that's the type. You can't, if you're going to change the Mobiflight type, you've got to change this too. I would suggest not changing any of it. And then we'll come down here. We don't need to get we're not going to get the address pins from memory, and we're not going to get the string from memory, and we're not going to assign parameters. And we're not going to assign pins. And during the attach, we're not going to pass parameters. And so we have cleaned that up. We can take out this entire part for custom device 2, since we don't have a custom device 2, which ends there. So now we've tightened up this code. We can get rid of some of these comments to tighten it up even more. And now we've got a very baseline function. We're seeing some errors here because we need to go into our custom device, our flap end. It's trying to create flap indicator, trying to construct that with no arguments, but our flap indicator default constructor expects 2 arguments. So we're going to take out those. And we also were expecting some arguments on the attach. And so we're going to take out those. Now we've got to go change the implementation. So we're going to go to flapin.cpp. Where is that up here? I'll show you something that I like to do. There it is. Since I'm going to be using flapin.cpp a lot, I drag it all the way to the right, and then I pin it here so that I always know, okay, it's all the way over there. We don't need this right now, and we're on a tight screen, so let's fix this. So now we're going to take out these arguments from the constructor and from the attach. And since we took out those arguments, those are no longer valid, but we didn't need them, and we don't need that. So now we've got a really basic project, and it should be running, but as long as we're in here, let's go for broke on the big compile here. Remember, this is the set method. Let's clear this out just so we have a little more room. The set method provides a message ID, which is the same. We don't need our board. Oop. Important thing, yes. The boards and the devices don't save themselves, so I got to hit Control S here to save that. This message ID is the same as this number, this ID. So 0 we said was our flap position. So we are going to put, right now, normally we would assign that to a variable that we would then use in our display. But right now what we want to do is a debug message. Now, remember before I said you can't use that serial debug. We've got to use a different, we've got to use a command messenger way to do that. And we uncommented that line in, the platform.io.ini up at the top. Remember debug to command messenger. I won't show it. You remember that. But what we want to do here is paste in the debug script or the debug function for command messenger. So what this is, command messenger, send command, and then you can send a bunch of commands like button press, encoder turn, whatever. But what we'll also send here is a debug, and this is just a constant, 255, and then we're going to put a message in this. In this case, you can't put an argument in this, you've got to construct it, so let's do a quick char buff 100, dang it, and we will sn printf, and we'll put this in a buff and size of buff, and we will put in set let's put in the device name. So this is flap end device got a message with %s. And what we will do then is we want to do message ID, which better be 0 here, and set point. So message ID got passed in on the set, and set point is the character, is the string that gets passed in. All of the messages get passed in, whether they're numbers, integers, floats, strings, they all get passed in as a C string, as a char star. And so we want to use a %s here to display that. If we wanted to use that value, like say we had the flap %, this isn't defined yet. So we would define this probably as a global here, but float flap % equals, and then we do an A2, it's a float, so set point. I'm not going to, okay, so, and then oh, did you know this? Hold down the Alt key, use the arrow key to move a line in. I love that. I use that, and Alt key, Shift, and arrow key will copy the line straight down. Shift, delete, deletes a line. So we've put this in a number that we could use to set the Y position of that circle that I'm going to draw later on. So let's add that. And we'll put this in quotes so that we know the string, and we'll pass a float, and then we will do flap % back here. All right. And finally, we will replace the command messenger with buff. So this will send that out. Let's make sure that everything looks good. It does. We also have a 1, so we could repeat that down here. We won't do that for now. We'll just leave that alone. All right, looks good. Let's give it a compile, and let's go for broke. We'll upload it at the same time. I've got a lot of things plugged in at once. I happen to know that this is Comp 10 that we were just working on. Let me show you a couple of quick tricks. In case, I'm assuming you probably know this, but if we do a device manager, which opened on my other screen, you can always keep an eye on this. So if we, the cheating way would be to unplug it and see which one disappeared. Yep, 10 disappeared. And we will plug that back in. There it is. So we know we've got the right device. Sometimes to make sure that I know that I'm doing the right device, I like to select it. So right here, rather than using auto, which usually gets it right, but just in case, because I've got other ESP32s plugged in here, just click on this and then pick it up here. If you plug it into a different port, it might come up with a different COM, but so be aware of that. All right, enough talking. Let's go for broke and let's upload this and see what happens. Now I would expect, oh, I didn't realize has this been on the whole time and you haven't seen maybe some of what I've been typing? I hope not. Oh, failed. We get to debug. Let's see what happened. Let's see, it's not liking some case labels here. So, did I forget a semicolon? No. Okay, MF custom device, nothing matches this. Why am I getting an error on these case label? That's interesting. Oh yeah, okay. I'm guessing it's this float flat percent. It doesn't like that I initialize this with a value, and then that could be unused later. So let's see. Let's do this. Let's copy this. Let's take out the declaration, and let's define it up here. And we'll just say equals 0.0. Sometimes I forget that switch case statements don't. These aren't really blocks, so you can't. This is really one big block. These don't work like blocks in if statements. That's just my being stupid with C. Let's try recompiling now and see if this goes through. I think I'm okay with this char buff here since this isn't declared with a value. There we go. Okay. Oop, I meant to upload it. Keep an eye on this guy. As he's uploaded, this screen should go blank and stay blank. If I was smart, I would probably do an ESP. I'd probably, and I may need to, I think I've used this for another device, so I am guessing when we get over into Mobiflight, this might have some info in it already. But let's take a look. Before we go to Mobiflight, let's talk about what I would normally do even before I get to Mobiflight, and that is I'd test this out in the serial monitor. So I'm going to hit the plug down here to start a serial monitor, and it'll go on 10. And the serial monitor has started, but nothing is really happening yet. Let me turn off this so that maybe we get a little more room. And we've got a serial monitor just sitting there, and I hit enter, nothing happens. Now if I hit a 7 and semicolon, you're not going to see this echo. So I'll try to talk through what I'm typing here. What I did was I typed the number 7 and a semicolon, and that 5NA is exactly what I expected to see come back. That just tells me that the thing's alive. There are a few other commands, and we can paste a link to them, or you can look them up in the source code right here. Maybe that's what we'll do. If I do a 12, I did a 1, 2 semicolon. You don't need to press enter, just a semicolon. So what we're doing is we're talking raw command messenger here. Semicolon means end of the command. And it's telling me, okay, yes, you've got a device. It's the 17 is the message response type. It's a flap indicator, and it has a device, flap indicator device. Is it 9? 9 tells me what the board is. The board is CC craw flap indicator. That was in one of our platform IO.inis, and this is the device type, and then a serial number for the device. The version numbers, the minimum version number expects the minimum firmware number. What this is telling me is everything's working. Now let's try sending it a command. So to send it a custom device command, you use 32, 0, because this is the first device, comma, 0 message ID, and we'll send it 12 semicolon. And we get a bunch of debug back, and it crashed. Nice. This is what a crash dump looks like. If you want to debug a crash dump, I am almost positive it has something to do with my copy over here with my command. I wonder if my buffer's too small. Because that could be more than 100 characters. Probably not though. But you know what? We'll just bump it up just to make sure. I bet you maybe my A to F failed. Could be a lot of things. Let's talk about what you do in this case though. One of the things that I would like to do is in my platform io.ini. So right here, this works with a ESP32. What I'm going to add is a monitor filter that will debug that crash dump for me. Let me see if I've got that. Let me see if I got that script handy. Here it is. And what I want to add, this will only apply to the ESP32, so we'll put it in this one. Do we have another monitor section in here? Got monitor speed. The exact place doesn't matter, but just for neatness, I'm going to put in a monitor filter that is the exception decoder. Now, when we rebuild it, we'll build it and upload it here. While that's going, let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. So message ID is an integer, the string is set point, and flat percent is a float. Oh, it should be LF, not F, right? I'm not even gonna. Let's since it's only a 17-second. Upload, let's try it again. Oh, it's still building. Oh, I hadn't scrolled to the bottom. Sorry about this, because I'm going to have to do it again. I'll pause for you guys. Okay, the build has completed. Let's try this again. Now, I don't think that this change made it into the build. What we should see here when we try this is another crash. So 32,0,0,12 is what crashed it last time. Oh, no, well, I guess this change did make it in. It's working now. What we could do is make this crash again. Excuse me. Make this crash again, and you could see the output of that, but just know that trick, that on an ESP32 you can add that filter and it'll tell you what's going on. But hey, on the plus side here, we do now see that this is working. The 255 that it responded with. So what I typed was 32. Let me see, I'll put it in. Let's see, where's my notepad? What I typed in was 32,0,0,12 semicolon. That's exactly what I typed in to this terminal, 0, 0, and let's just put in HELL0, HELLO, and semicolon. And you can see now that that was passed as a string, and when I tried to do the ADF, it didn't do anything. It gave me a 0. But that's a quick way. So that's a quick way of doing a debug that is compatible with the client. All right, we have enough. So hey, we got something working. It looks nice. Let's see what it looks like over in Mobiflight. So I am going to start up the connector. And we'll look for some connected devices. And it's not seen anything. We see a couple compatible here, including our COM10. Why not? We haven't copied over the board definition. So to do that, what we're going to want to do is Mobiflight helpfully makes a zip file with all this information. The problem is it doesn't get rebuilt after we're talking with the dev team about this right now. It only gets rebuilt if you delete these. So I'm going to delete the build directory and I'm going to delete the dist directory. Because those were built on our very first build, not on the ones after I had changed the board and the device. The other thing you want to make sure is that you have saved the board and the device. They do not auto-save when you do a compile like everything else does. I don't know if that can be fixed or not, but it doesn't do it, and it can be super frustrating when you go through all this process and you realize, wait, I haven't saved things. So I deleted those two. I'm going to clean my file. That's what the trash can does, is it cleans it. It gets rid of all the intermediate stuff. And then we are going to rebuild. And it should go after that. Meanwhile, while that's building, let's get some, let's find our folders where we're going to need to copy this stuff. Is it this one? Here it is. I knew I had it open here someplace. Your community, your folders go in. So this is my Mobiflight install directory, which is usually under your user directory, app data, local Mobiflight, Mobiflight connector. You'll see all of these. The main Mobiflight client is in here somewhere as an XE. But you'll see a community folder. This is where all your custom ones go. You won't have some of these that I've built, but there will be a few that are now distributed as part of it. So what we will need to do once this finishes, what we'll do is we'll open that up and we'll copy. Oh, did you see that right there? Creating zip file. So we know that happened. Now that zip file will appear in this dest. I can't open it up without a plugin that I don't have open. So what I'm going to do is right click, reveal in File Explorer, which opened on another window. And we see here that now we've got a zip file. And we need to copy the contents of this over here. There is a minor bug in the ESP32 firmware. This should be put into a directory under here, and it's not. So what we're going to have to do is create our own directory. Again, you won't have to do this if you're using an Arduino, but what we want to do is the directory of that is in the platformio.ini, and the folder name, I'm scrolling up to the top, is right here. This is the name that it is expecting. You can actually use any one you want, but for consistency's sake, let's just grab that and we'll come over here, we'll create a new folder and we'll name it that. And now we'll Alt-Tab and grab, this is the zip file that we opened up. We're going to grab all of these. And we will drag those three folders into Ccraw Flapend. We see them there. So we see our board definition with the right date and time. And we see, dang it, sorry. Let's go up one. We'll see our devices with the right date and time. And the firmware doesn't really matter because we can't write the firmware, or at least the ESP32 version of that. Now we come back into Mobiflight, we're going to need to restart Mobiflight. When you're doing this, you'll be restarting Mobiflight a lot because you cannot program a board that is connected. So you start Mobiflight, you close it, you start it, you close, you start it, you test it, you see something you need to fix, you got to close it. Now let's, oh, why isn't this, okay, so now let's talk about, this is a common thing. Why isn't it working? It's still not showing up. All right, problem number 2. Did we leave a monitor running someplace? Mobiflight can only connect, and we did. It's still running over here, so we need to close this monitor with, I used the trash can to close that monitor. I don't see anything else spinning over here, so we don't have another monitor running. We don't have PuTTY running. And now we need to restart Mobiflight. I guess that's a feature request, would be rescan boards. Now, if we're lucky, ooh, look at that. We got the green check mark down here. That means it sees a connected device. Let's see it. There it is, flap end ESP32. There it is, and here's the information about it, and here's that project details, and these websites would go to null because we never set them. Here is an interesting thing though. It already has a device assigned because I was using this device as a test device before. And so it has, we didn't set this, and it shouldn't come in by default. It has one already in there. Now, because we can't write this, we can't reset the board. So what I need to do is a different kind of reset. This is, again, you won't have this problem with your Arduino, but we'll have it with the ESP32. I'm going to close this to release the serial port. Only one device can have a serial port at a time. And what I'm going to do is go back to my PowerShell, and somewhere in my PowerShell history, Control R, I've got ESP tool. There it is. Control R or escape to make the search go away. And so let's talk about this. I've got ESP tool, port, and this is key. Let's change this to a 10. So ESP tool -P COM10 erase the flash. Oh, come on. Let me figure out why my ESP tool isn't working. Oh, probably maybe because I got to run it. Do I have to run this? Maybe I've got to run this from it sets up my environment in here. So I'm going to start Platform IO terminal. Let's try running it here and see if this works. That's it. The path was set up right. So running it in terminal in Platform IO versus PowerShell in this case. This takes about 30 seconds or so. What this is doing is it's completely blanking this flash. Obviously, you're not going to see anything on the screen as it's going because we've never even initialized a screen, and it's not like a computer or something that has a default display driver. We've got to code it, and we haven't coded that. There we go. It's done. Now we're going to need it erased the firmware, and it erased the memory where the Mobiflight configuration was stored. So we're going to need to reflash the firmware here. Again, if you were in an Arduino, you could do this from the client, but ESP32 you cannot. This should take about 15 seconds, and there it goes. Done. Now let's try the Mobiflight connector. Green check mark, looking good. It's saying that there's a flap indicator. Again, this is not the first time. We're just going to cancel out of this and we'll pretend it's the first time in. I had a test in here already. So let's go to we've got our flap indicator. Now we've got to, we'll give it a new name. It's got to be less than 16 characters. And we're going to add a device, custom device, and there's our flap indicator device. No pins. And it has a name, flap in, and we'll just call it dev1 just to help differentiate it. And we will upload the configuration. Yes, we really want to do it. A lot of times I notice this sticks around. If you want to make sure that it worked, you can reload the configuration. And we get the test. That looks okay. We can come back in and make sure it really took, and it did. So now let's, you know what, let's delete this and let's start. So we'll do flap percentage. And when we go to edit this, let's not worry about the variable right now. We'll go in straight into the display. We only have one device hooked up here, so it populates it for us, and it is a custom device that we'll be using. And it has the new device name that we assigned, and the message that we're going to use. We've got two messages here. We got that flap position, flap lever position. Remember, that's 0 and 1, and we'll just pass the value along. Now, if we test it, we saw something back here. Let's close this. We'll just say okay for now. And what happened was, we see our debug message come across. If you don't have this display on the bottom, if you've never worried about that before, come up to your settings, turn on logging, and set your log level to debug. And so we see here that flap indicators got 0 message with 1, which was, and the float is 1.00. So we see that that's we see that message working. That's pretty cool. So that's the debug message that's coming back. So we could try some different values. So 0.45, which would be a more natural one. We'll test that, and the result back is 0.45 on there, and we see that message. When you close it out, it resets it to 0. So then what we would do, obviously, is change this. We'd add our sim variable, and we would pick, you know, a flap one of the flap variables from the generic. From the generic, and I think the one I usually use is the trailing edge left %. I think that'll work, and we could start up and we could run and we could see that, but all we would see is messages flying across the screen with that percentage. So the next thing we would be doing, well, we might as well save this. So the next thing we'd be doing is starting to pull in our display libraries and get to coding. Maybe that's what we'll do in the next one, because this is already getting pretty long for that. I hope this wasn't too confusing. I hope that seeing a few things debugged along the way helped. Let's see if we hit everything. So no upload. Usually the reason it won't upload is because the serial port's open. And why is it compatible? Usually because the serial port's open. You can see what'll happen. Yeah, if Mobiflight's open, we see Mobiflight is still open now. I can tell from the little dot down here. If I try to upload this, we'll start this compiling while we walk through this. You'll see that we'll get an error because the serial port's busy. Where's your device? Yep, that's it. Did you remember to save your board and device template, and did you upload the right ones? You see this failed because the terminal was busy, because I had Mobiflight running. The number of times I will do that in a project is way too many. Using the terminal for debugging, the magic command here is 32,0,0 or comma message ID. So if we wanted to test the second with 0 indexing, we would put a 1 there, but we didn't put any actions on that. So that's the message ID is super handy, and that's how we would use it for debugging and testing, then opening this up with Flight Simulator. So next time I think we will add some code, talk about how we do that, and get this thing working. Thanks for sticking with me on all this, and as always, discussion in the Discord or below this one. Have a great day and good luck with your project.